Hello everybody and welcome to tonight's Train Sim World 2 roadmap. I am JD and it's lovely to see you all tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. I am joined as ever by our exec producer Matt Pedalston in that corner.
Hello.
That corner. And then we have above me, we've got Adam.
Hello.
And we have a new guest on the stream tonight, and we're going to try and make this a little bit of a running theme actually, because we want to try and bring more of the team onto live stream so they can meet you all and have a chance to talk about some of the stuff that they're up to. I'm joined tonight by Lukas. Hello, Lukas, new member of the team.
Hello. Guten Tag.
Not at all
Hello.
confusing. Lucas.
Adam and a Lukas.
Oh yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. We can just bring another Adam on and just kind of play. Absolutely, we can have lots of fun with that. So we'll be chatting a little bit more to Lukas in kind of the first part of the live stream tonight. Give him a chance to say hello and talk about some of the things that he's done in the past with Train Sim World 2 and sort of his history with the railways and simulation games as well, and what he's going to bring to the table for Train Sim World 2 as well. So look forward to kind of hearing a little bit more from Lukas. But tonight we are talking about the roadmap. June's roadmap is now live. If you want to give it a read, there's plenty of fun stuff in there. Lots and lots of nice screenshots and pictures. You can see some of them cycling on our backdrop actually throughout the course of this stream when our faces aren't in the way. But this month's roadmap's very much about consolidation and improvement. It's very much about we've just released Spirit of Steam. We want to try and make that as possible, as good as we can possibly make it. We're aware there are other things that we need to be working on right now, and that is what our focus is going to be. We're going to go through some of that over the course of the next hour and a bit, and I'm going to be talking to Matt about some of the longer term improvements that we're making and Spirit of Steam. I'm going to be talking to Adam about Preservation Crew and some of the things that we've got going on there as well. So what's new this month? That's a good question to ask because, as I say, we are in a period where we're not necessarily providing much information or doing much kind of work on first-party content. We decided to try and use the time a little bit more introspectively so that we can take a look at what's going on within the game and try and improve some of the things that we know you guys have been talking about for a long time. So we're going to be trying to spend that time on that. But there are a couple of interesting new things that we wanted to just run through with you. And again, if you want a little bit more context on some of these, you can read the roadmap. But we have included a new Loco add-on from our friends at Rivet. So that will be more information on that will be coming in the coming weeks and months. We have included a new timetable for Hamburg-Lübeck, which will hopefully be part of the Preservation Crew update that goes alongside it. We haven't fully confirmed that it's going to come out with that.
Not entirely confirmed yet.
Yeah, not entirely confirmed yet, but that's the aim. If it comes a little bit later, that is absolutely fine. But there's again more information about those from Joe. We wanted to get Joe on the stream tonight. Unfortunately, he had some prior arrangements. We'll see if we can get him on for a future roadmap stream so we can talk a little bit more about timetables because, as we know, he is the maestro at it. We want to try and get him to talk ad nauseum about all of the things that he's working on. And then we've added the manual fireman operation to Spirit of Steam onto the roadmap as well, just because it's something that's a slightly larger project. It obviously completely changes the way that you engage with Spirit of Steam, and it's something that we are currently investigating and we're looking to kind of proceed forward. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the Steam section that we're going to go into. So, by way of introduction tonight, I'm going to quickly just go around the circle and just ask, really, we're going to come back to Steam, but obviously that is the big thing that we have put out in the last week. I mean, it was last week. God, that seems a long time ago now, doesn't it? I want to just quickly go around the circle and just sort of get your feelings on Steam and how it all went, because really it was a huge release for us. It was something that was one of the... I've not seen a buzz around the community probably as much as I have for the entirety of the time that I've been at Dovetail. So I'm going to come to you, Matt. I always get my directions wrong because there we go, Matt. First, please tell me a little bit about how you thought the release went and your kind of current or your thoughts on the release as a whole.
Oh, really good. It's been really fun. I've been watching some streams and really looking in the forum posts and watching some YouTube videos, and it's been really fun seeing people sort of wrestling with the steam trains, getting to grips with them, and learning to drive what are really, really very different kinds of trains than we've had in the game before. You know, it's previously the sort of the most outlandish train we had was the 101, really. I think in certainly in UK heritage, and people enjoyed getting the grips of the gears on that. And steam engines are just a completely different beast, and getting used to the fact that you can't just throw the regulator to 100% to get more power. Actually works in the other direction half the time. So it's been really fun seeing that, and also, you know, there's been some interesting things that people have found that we need to look at and see maybe if there's improvements we can make there. So, but all in all, no, it's been great fun just seeing people enjoying it, which is after 18 plus months of working on this, I think a lot of the team have been watching actually to see how people have been getting on with it, and yeah, it's been tremendous. So thank you to everyone who's sharing what you're doing. We're enjoying looking at it.
Brilliant. And Adam, obviously you've seen a few updates go through our doors in the last is it 10 years, over 10 years,
Coming up to 15.
coming up for 15 years.
Yeah.
Where does this rank?
Very high indeed. I mean, the first generation train sim that we've been working on, and it's still going to this day, which is absolutely amazing. We obviously had steam locomotives out of the box with that, and over the years they have seen incredible step-ups in quality and immersion and everything. And I'm really excited that I was part of the Riviera in the 50s project. And the amazing locomotives that were put into that, and the whole array of steam locomotives and different experiences. But yeah, I totally agree that this is a whole nother level of the experience of driving steam engines. You know, the team has learned an awful lot and been watching players an awful lot about how steam engines have gone, how they've been used. And over the years, we've been lucky enough to get on board an awful lot of the talent that's in the community, and be able to get their direct input into these projects. And yeah, it's a fantastic thing to drive. It is completely different. You are not just pressing buttons and making the machine go. You actually have to manage a steam engine. And so it definitely ranks up there with the likes of the 101, where you do have to be preempting what you're doing. You can't just watch the signals go by. So yeah, it's really, really exciting. 6 years since the launch of Train Sim World, and I think it's an amazing addition to the lineup.
Awesome. And Lukas, obviously you only started at Dovetail sort of a week before the launch. So what was your first experience of a launch at Dovetail like?
Well, no, I've known especially the signal department. I've known them for quite a while, so I've heard their complaints. They have been working for the longest. They have the most time they spent on a route, I think, was on Steam, the Steam route. So they are very happy that it's well received, because they spend a lot of time doing it, and that makes me happy, because they especially one Ben put a lot of heart and soul into the route, and I'm glad that it's going well, because it's good for him.
Brilliant. That's great to hear. And obviously we'll come back to Steam in a little bit, because there are obviously things that we want to try and communicate with you guys about what's happening, where the kind of the patches are coming in, and what the things are that we're going to be working on with Steam. But I just wanted to jump in with really and kind of give a little bit of a Q&A to Lukas, because we've kind of got him for the next 10-15 minutes or so, and then we'll kind of jump back into the three of us. So I wanted to give a little bit of time to intro Lukas to the rest of the community and everybody on the stream. So hello again. It's lovely to have you, and we'd actually only ever been on a call the first time earlier today, wasn't it, Lukas? Which was nice, and we've been chatting a lot on Messenger and whatnot, but it's really great to actually get a chance to see you. Can you just tell everybody in the community just a little bit of history about yourself, and kind of how you've come to be, well, I mean, you can tell what your role is going to be at Dovetail, or what your role is at Dovetail, and how you came to be there.
According to many at Dovetail, I've been very smart and kept myself out of meetings by just freelancing for it. But now I'm...
Is that how you do it?
Yeah, not anymore. I've been sucked in. No, I've been working on Train Simulator since it came out, basically as almost. I was 10 years when it came out, I think. I was 10 years old, and I've been modding since then, and it kind of gradually stepped up to modding payware, and then fully payware, and then I did my first route, and then it just happened. And that's how my contact to Dovetail then came together, because if you release a route, you get the attention of Dovetail. They are interested in the people of the community who know their stuff, who know how to develop games, and So if you know how to develop games and love this game, please apply. No, it's been a good time, and basically, yeah, it now came up that the people really. I've been doing more and more for TSW, and there comes a point where you want to be a part of the team and not just sit outside. And Dovetail has actually asked me, I think 2.5 years ago, the first time to join them, but I unofficially asked. And at that time I couldn't do it. I still had university and other stuff to do, but now it's the time, and here I am, making sure Germans are represented.
So yeah, tell me a little bit about what your role is at Dovetail, and actually kind of what you're bringing to the table to the community. Because obviously, some of the community might know you, some community might sort of have understood what you've been working on in the past. But actually, what is your specialism? What will you be bringing to the team?
Specialism for me is hard to explain because I'm not the best in a certain thing. I just do a lot. Like I'm a half decent skilled engineer. I know how to do 3D models, and at the same time I have a big interest for German railways, so that's how it came together. And yeah, my main responsibilities are now keeping the German, like everything that belongs in the technical department, so signals, track, but also a little bit of gameplay, just making sure that all of that is up to the standards that I want them to have, and Dovetail, of course. But yeah, we want to make the German. My goal is that the German content gets even better than it already is, because I think it's like at least the last 2 routes were pretty good, and the community has reflected that. And I'm also here because I know a lot of people in the community, and they can, in my opinion, they can help a lot developing a game. So it's always good to have the contacts, and especially all of the drivers and people that work on the railway. Having the contact to them is important because they know how it works in reality, and that's what we are here for, trying to make a good train simulation that's based on reality.
Amazing. So the German community are going to be absolutely loving your work. I can tell. What's been your favorite bit of content that you've seen come out of Train Sim World 2? What would you say is your highlight as a player, or kind of out of the loop of Dovetails before you started, I guess?
Before I started, that's a hard question because I enjoyed most making the content. No, I know that's a difficult topic. No, one of the most things I actually enjoyed the most is Dresden Riesa, mainly because it's a network style route, and I just love networks. And if I could, I would make every route a network route. It gives the most gameplay. You can try from A to B to C to D, and it was a good product overall. And I hope we do more types of that route in the future, but we don't know what's to come.
It was actually, if I may jump in really quick there was a really cool thing that we did once at one of the DTG company gatherings, was they gathered everyone together and they put a marker in 3 corners. One was the drivers and people who like to be in the cab compartment. One was passengers and scenery, and the other was networks and control, and basically got everyone understanding what part of the software do people like to be in the most. Is it enjoying the beautiful scenery and the access to the different areas of the world that you can? Was it being in the driving seat and seeing all the behind the scenes, like getting into the flight deck of an aircraft? Or was it the overseeing the network and operating and being controlled and being able to simulate the complexity of the systems that it takes to run these kinds of transport systems? And surprisingly enough, it was actually quite an even spread across all 3. I mean, I know this was a number of years ago, but the fact that there was actually not one particular strong interest in the software and how people use it, that you can be interested in the scenery or the driving experience or the network and control. It's really cool to hear that you're from the network camp. I do think that is myself as well. So
it's interesting you should say that. We actually, I think, remember rightly, we posted that out to the community as well, and the German audience were the ones that related back to that network and control side.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So your next project is signaling. Is it a signal simulator? Is it, Lucas? You'll be bringing dispatcher mode, will you? No promises. That's me.
That's not happening. Shush, Adam. I'm putting a Sam hat on at this point. Adam, be quiet.
That is going to be taken out of context in about 3 seconds. I can tell.
I'm gonna lose
shut
my
that down
mute
right
control,
now.
aren't I?
Where's the mute
Crack
button?
that whip.
Yeah.
But okay, great. And sorry, I'll sort of jump in here and be big bad JD and just say no, not happening. So at least not on the roadmap. So Lucas, yeah, just quick. We're going to let you go in sort of a couple of minutes' time, but obviously there are things that are currently being worked on in the background, and you've got your fingers in a few pies already. Is there anything in particular that you can tell us? That you are really excited that you're currently or will be working on? Or is it a little bit of a closed book at the moment?
Yeah, it's pretty close, but I think I can mention one thing, like just barely. One of my goals is actually making certain types of safety systems on PZB more accessible. So I'm also working with the company basically to get it to make the player better understand what they're getting into if they turn on PZB or other stuff. And
sign me up.
And I think
that's very much like the Steam engines, isn't it? When you grasp the functionality of these systems and you actually bring that into the driving experience, it feels so much more rewarding. You hear the stigma that driving trains is easy because all you're doing is accelerating and braking. Well, actually, no, it's not. It's actually really hard. The train wants to stop when you have all these systems going. So being able to bring them in and have them active does actually make the experience a lot more exciting and rewarding when you get to it. So that's awesome.
Trains in world. The train wants to stop and you have to fight it.
On that note, Lucas, is there anything else you wanted to talk to the community about or let the community know about before I let you go for the evening?
Probably not. I'm just.
There was one thing actually. That you've got something in the backdrop of your shot at the moment. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about the backstory of as you can see, the light up station sign above you?
I accidentally told that to someone. Now it's going around and everybody wants to hear. No, I got this when a station was renovated via a few contacts. This is the sign from our local underground line. And I think I carried it home, and for some reason, the police thought I stole it off a station, and I got into quite an argument and almost got arrested for taking that sign home. But no, it's legally obtained.
Glad to hear it. Wouldn't have it any other way, Lucas. Thanks very much for joining us tonight, and we look forward to seeing you on some of these in the future. Hoping that, as I say, we can bring you on and share some of the German love to obviously all players, but obviously particularly our German player base. So thanks very much for joining us. Welcome to Dovetail, and we look forward to seeing what you come up with.
Okay. Great to have you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Lucas. Bye-bye.
Cheers, Lucas. And then there were 3. I don't know if you want to make me a little bit more central, Matt, or if you're happy with me just being here and
Well, I'd
Adam
put you
can
there
be
so that we could
lonesome.
see the glorious face of the loco.
Oh God, no! Nobody wants that. Okay, all right. Let's go into the actual content of the roadmap for the evening, shall we? Let's talk a little bit about Spirit of Steam, because we kind of touched on the immediate kind of here's how we feel about the route, here's kind of how happy we were about it, and personally for me as well, it was really great to see so many people engaging positively with the content. Obviously, we know it's not 100% of the way there yet, but it was really good to see everybody kind of jumping in, giving it a go, giving us some really constructive feedback and sharing memories as well. It was really great to see some kind of really emotive, evocative stories of how people got into the world of railways through Steam, and it was able to kind of bring out some really positive and really kind of heartwarming memories that you can see a few of them on the forums, you can see a few of them in sort of reviews and whatnot. But I think for me that felt like the most powerful thing that that I was able to see from the release. But obviously we're here today to talk about Steam as it is now, what the kind of the short term we're looking at for Steam, and what the kind of the more longer term improvements that we're looking to make to the route, because as we say, we're aware that it's not perfect at the moment. There are a couple of things that we obviously want to fix sooner rather than later, but the focus at the moment, you might have noticed, as I say, we were very clear to enunciate on the roadmap that the things that have been added to the roadmap, so the Rivet Games Loco add-on is not a Steam Loco. None of the things on the current roadmap are Steam related, and that's because, apart from the manual fireman, obviously, and that's because we want to try and make sure that, as I say, we can refine what we've got here. We can improve it based on your feedback. So Matt, did you want to just tell us a little bit about some of the things that we've got perhaps in the short term, and maybe a little bit about why they are some of the things that are coming out first?
Sorry, my mind has gone completely blank.
Just reading all the awesome GWE update stuff, aren't you?
Yeah, I can give you a few hints if you like.
Give me a hint, yeah, because
okay,
my brain has just completely gone.
There was a couple of bits and pieces that so some of our console players were coming up automatically onto assisted mode,
yes,
rather than automatic mode. So we will be changing that pretty sharpish, because obviously we want particularly people who are new to Steam for the first time, we don't want them to have to deal with the dampers and kind of all of those additional bits and pieces that add the complexity level. Obviously that's an optional thing, so we're going to default that back. Obviously I know that Matt, you said you tried it, and actually that
it's a little bit more complex than that, yeah, because we had actually one of the QA team, I had them specifically do a fresh install onto a machine, and it defaulted to automatic, so at this point. But we have put in some, there is a change that they did see in certain circumstances. It looked like it might be wrong, so there'll be something coming for that one. And the only advice I give you in the meantime is, if you're not intending to use it in manual, just go and double check, make sure it is an automatic, and you might find your life gets a whole lot easier.
Yep, we have we have some of the wagons and coaches coming to Scenario Planner, I believe, as well, or be able to operate it within Scenario Planner.
Yep.
We also have, and I've written all these up, so I'm going to read them verbatim pretty much. So bear with me while I find my notes. Sorry, I have about 4 million tabs open, so I'm just going to try and make sure that I'm reading everything as correctly. Of course, the big one, the joint track joint sounds.
Yeah, so we got one of the engineers to look into what was going on there, track that back to an error that was put in while fixing something else. And the tools are just super complicated now. This thing's going to happen, so that was fixed. And then we found that, having done that, it wasn't difficult at all to retrofit the change, reapply it back to the route. So that's been done. The beta team are looking at it at the moment and singing its praises.
Great, that's good to know, because I know that was one of the big areas of feedback that we were getting from a lot of players, was the lack of track joint sound. So it's good that that's on.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's good that's on there nice and early. There are a few other bits and pieces that are perhaps slightly more minor than that. There are a couple of I know there's a couple of people that are able to walk out of bounds. We've blocked those off.
There's also one or two services which take you out of bounds. So there's a 1058 service, I think it is, in Edge Hill, and it actually drives you out of bounds. It's just a slight miscommunication between the environment team that set the boundaries up and with the gameplay team needed to pull beyond a point to come back again to get the loco out of an area. So those boundaries have been changed, and everyone is now talking to each other properly. So that one has been fixed, yes. One of the other ones.
It is one of those eternal battles, though, especially coming from the gameplay team, is that we want the entire world in the route. We want as much track as we can drive.
Well, we also.
So, yeah.
It sounds the way I've said it, like there's a lack of communication when these things are set. But actually, there's just like a detailed Google Earth file drawn up with exactly where they want the boundaries, and then what happens is that someone forgets the exact location of a boundary. I mean, they can see it in the editor, but you can't see it in the 2D view of the editor, where a lot of the gameplay team do that. There's just details there. The other change then is if you try and drive certain services, you'll find that you can't get the brakes to release, or you get the brakes, they look like they're released, but you can't make the train move. And what you have to do there is go and manually pull the release cords on the bauxite wagons, the brownish coloured ones. And that's because the vacuum braked wagons are in the middle of the consist, not coupled to the loco, so they're not being released. And so the formations are going to get reordered to the correct order, so that the braked wagons, the fitted braked wagons, are next to the loco. So that'll just fix that. That'll make that work a lot smoother.
When you say corrected, do you mean on the authenticity level rather than software level? Like those kinds of wagons would always be.
They should always be connected to the loco, yeah. That way you get the benefit when you're braking of having some additional braking coming from those wagons as well. So it should have been set up that way. It got missed. So that's been re-looked at. And then the disappearing fireman anims. We've got a number of cases where, like for example, in some of the scenarios, particularly Time for Scouse is one I can think of off the top of my head, where when you couple up to the coaches, your fireman vanishes. And there's literally just a missed tick box. The show fireman tick box wasn't on the second service. And so all of the gameplay has been reviewed in service mode and in all scenarios and tutorials, and made sure all those tick boxes are ticked. So you shouldn't find any missing drivers and firemen now on trains, which is good. And then the last one is the derailing problem some of you are having on the 8F. So when you apply the locomotive, the combination brake handle, if you watch the BC value, which represents what the steam brake is doing, what you'll find is that goes up to its maximum, about 220, really quite quickly. And what that means is that the wagons are not yet braked, because vacuum brakes take a hot minute to apply, whereas your loco brake is near instant, and you're going pretty much, if you're not careful and watching it, you're going to a maximum loco brake, and then all of these wagons, which are loose coupled, are going bang, 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 and they're all clanging into each other. If you imagine the amount of distance at the back end of the train, and what's happening is that it was crashing in, and eventually one of them hits it too hard and derails. That's realistic, actually, and that was one of the big skills of driving these trains. However, it's too easy to derail, it's so that's what we're looking at. But that's a longer-term fix. In the meantime, just ease up on your brakes. When you're driving the 8F, what you need to do is watch that steam brake value, which is like I said, the one that says BC on the HUD, and just operate the combination brake so that you don't end up with your loco leading all the brakes, and you should find that it's a much easier thing. Remember also, the combination brake is not like a self-lapping brake on a diesel. 40% doesn't mean 40%. It means constantly keep applying. So you'll find it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. So you need to keep, you need to adjust the brake handle. Watch what's going on with it. You'll get the hang of it if you look at the brake gauges. But it's important you look at the brake gauges. Even just leaving it on 30%, at some point you'll actually be running at full 100% of your brakes. Don't get hung up on the percent. Watch the values and just make sure you keep control. And you should be fine. You shouldn't derail anymore.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's as you get used to it, I think that we're seeing less and less of this kind of thing. But obviously, if you're a first-time player and you're not necessarily aware of that, I think that's where we're seeing quite a lot of the problem for it. So, for clarity's sake, Matt, in terms of the longer-term versus the shorter-term improvements for some of this stuff, we have got a patch which we are putting together, a patch update that we're putting together now. We hope to get it out by the end of the week. As far as I'm aware, within that patch, the fireman animations, the mineral wagons, and the derailing side of things that you were talking about, in terms of that harshness of the braking situation, they are slightly more longer term in improvements. Whereas the things that we were talking about, the first port of call, so the track joint sounds, the defaulting to the assisted mode, some of the achievements that weren't unlocking should be fixed, and mastery should be fixed with this update that's coming in the shorter term.
Yep.
But those those other three that we were talking about just then, they are slightly more longer term improvements, and we
The
hope
longer
that
term,
there'll
yeah,
be
for a number of
couple,
reasons.
2 or 3.
The fireman anims will increase memory usage, so we just need to make sure that it's fine. I'm sure it is, but we want to double check. And the derailing one actually is something we need to test more broadly across the entire game, because it's affixed to how couplings work or something. I think really it's couplings and buffers. It's just one of the problems of having things that only are in core. Everything gets affected if there's a change.
And
To hedge off the comments that we might usually get, testing and improving the collision of the couplings and preventing derailing is not dumbing it down for consoles. Is that correct?
No. That's
So
not
hedging
dumbing
that one
it.
off.
That what that's doing is it's one of the things. So when we were trying to find out what was happening, that was when we found out. Oh yeah, it's actually derailing because the impacts are too harsh. But what we found was that actually it shouldn't have derailed at that point in some cases. So this is not going to make it to where it never derails for you. If you do it bad enough, you're still going to come off, and that's completely appropriate. But you'll find that it's actually it won't happen as much.
Yeah, and just one more thing before we move on from Steam, or just a couple of sort of admin points for Steam that I just wanted to come across. But Crazy Killer, thanks very much for reminding me of this in the chat, because we have flagged it. But the AI locos that are lacking sounds at the moment.
Chuffs. Yeah, it's the same root cause. Is that for whatever reason, some trains, and not all of them, but quite a lot of them, they don't chuff. The AI trains are not firing the chuffing component. So we've got a component which manages for AI trains. Obviously, for full fat physics trains that run semigraph, then you've got all of the valve events and everything else that are triggering these things. For non semigraph trains, there's something which sort of simulates the effect of those things, and in some cases that's just not running at all. So you don't get the chuff and you don't get the smoke chuff out the top either. So, but that is something engineering will look at. We don't have a lead on that one yet.
No. Okay, cool. Just a couple of little admin points. Something that I forgot to mention at the start. Someone gave me a nice little stat before we went online. Over 1 million kilometres have been driven on Liverpool to Crewe so far, which is awesome. That's a week in. Thank you everybody for contributing to that. Hope you've enjoyed every kilometre of those. And the other thing was just around layers and substitutions, because we're not sticking anything new onto the roadmap this time round. We really do encourage you to engage in Creators Club if you haven't already. There are some really great scenarios on there. We featured some of them on there, so you can take a look at them, and some great liveries that you can then try some of the Steam locos perhaps on other routes on off the rails mode as well as kind of heightening your experience of the route by sort of trying new liveries out and sort of just customizing really. So really encourage you to do that if you haven't already. There's some really great stuff in there. Okay, then let's go on to Preservation Crew, shall we? Let's draw a line under Steam. I'm sure we'll come back to it in future roadmaps, but let's talk about Preservation Crew, because we obviously had a large update last week, which I think in the roadmap we referred to as a veritable delicious German sandwich, which was reflected in the community as in certain ways, but we'll come back to that update in a second. I want to talk about, first of all, the things that are on this roadmap to begin with, because we've, if you haven't already, again, check it out. There's some really nice screenshots on there of the Great Western Express Preservation Crew update and some of the stuff that we've been looking at in terms of the improvements there, as well as Northern Trans-Pennine as well. And those are some of the ones that are coming up in the nearer future. So they are kind of at the top of the list of the Preservation Crew releases. So, Adam, tell us a little bit about those and some of the features that players can expect from those preservation updates.
Yeah, cool. I mean, the Great Western Express has been waiting a very long time for its release. It was, if you remember back towards Christmas, it was high on the list of the next ones to come out. It has had a number of testing and been pushed back, and we've also found more things. And the implementation of the destination boards on the 166 turned out to be a much bigger job than we originally planned. That was because it was a much older developed locomotive compared to what we've been doing recently. So that's had quite a number of updates to it to bring it in line. But yeah, really exciting that this is now coming to the forefront of release. Obviously, we can't guarantee the actual features of the upgrade until they are passed by QA, but obviously what we've said is what we're targeting, and the details will obviously be confirmed when the patch comes out. But yeah, probably worth. I mean, and I've also, because it's been so close to release on a number of occasions, some of you have been watching the streams for a long time. Obviously, may hear that I'm repeating myself a little bit, but it's just to reiterate to anyone that is new to these streams and hasn't had the previous updates or heard what I've been talking about before. So some of the key call outs is that we have now removed the classic layout lock on the controller. So this is if you are playing with a controller on any platform, when you started any of the gameplay on Great Western, then it would flash up a message saying, oh, you're going to have to play with the older layout that was on Train Sim World or Train Sim World 2020. You can now use the immersion controls, so that sorts that out. We have done a lot of changes to the timetable, but they've all been very touchy-feely around the sides, because it is a very old route, and we've been doing our best to bring it up to standards. There is danger of destabilizing it, so there's been a lot of polish gone into checking door sides, which wasn't a function we originally had when the route came out. So that's a cool thing we could bring in. We have improved things like the stopping accuracy. So when you pull into a station or you stop it, the train has been told to stop in a particular place. Those were all really tiny. I think you had to have the front axle within 2 meters of that blue marker to be able to confirm the objective. Now it's something like 10 meters. Anywhere within 10 meters of the marker will be good enough. So that's really cool. The key thing I've been working with actually a few people from the community, I've continued to monitor, as some may know, is the continued physics of the Class 166. And having had an update, it was a couple of years ago now, maybe 2020, when we did touch on a few things with the Class 166, there were still concerns that the acceleration wasn't as accurate as we desired it to be. Now, I was very concerned about this in that what would be the knock-on, and as we'll get to with post-mortems of preservation collection updates, the knock-on effect is a very concerning aspect of these releases. And having done all the other changes and having had everything else in a really good place and it feeling strong and reliable, I did give the go-ahead for the team to start looking at the acceleration physics of the 166. And I'm pleased to say that from the information we gained, as well as the assistance of Ed Fisk, as many know, in the community, we have improved the physics now much better to that which has been reported to us. So really looking forward to that. It hasn't had a negative effect on the timetable, which was always our major concern in that area. So thank you very much to everyone that has kept that alive and has been interested in seeing improvement to that, because it has come to fruition now. So really pleased to have been working on that. Another big one for the Great Western Express will be the inclusion of destination boards, and obviously the 166 getting its destination boards as well. So that's been really cool. Due to the way that route was made, and it being our second route ever released for Train Sim World, it did highlight a number of issues with the setup of the timetable that we had to adjust the departure board systems for, and they have actually been coming out over a number of releases. So that was one of the reasons the Great Western Express had to go back a little bit in terms of its release, because we needed to do a number of other releases and updates to the core systems to support Great Western Express coming out. So that's really exciting. So yeah, a number of the screenshots that I've provided for this roadmap stream and the article has been just showing off how great it makes the route feel when you can walk onto a platform and you can see where the trains are and where they're going. And obviously that includes the branch lines as well. So at Twyford, Maidenhead, Slough, Greenford, and even Reading, going off to the likes of Gatwick, Redhill and Basingstoke, the branch line PIS systems are working as well. So really pleased about that. And hopefully you could see that we took on board the numbers. You may remember a couple of months ago I was asking about what the numbers needed to be. So that's been really, really awesome. And then really probably the other one to mention is adding in the Greenford branch services to the Gen 8 timetable. Certainly when we released Great Western Express, the performance was not great in terms of operating on the consoles, and so we had to remove a number of items from the main timetable so that performance wouldn't be as impacted. Well, as it turns out, as we've learned over time, it was actually the variety of rolling stock and the memory usage of textures and different things going on. It wasn't necessarily the number of services that were running in this particular instance. So it's really cool that we've brought that back in. Now that is in testing. We feel great about it. It's certainly tested well on the Xbox and PlayStations that we've been running on the preservation crew, but we don't have final say if something gets included or not. That is our QA department and feedback we have from our beta testers. So fingers crossed that that does pass the mark. And then outside of that, it's just little things like the inclusion of static stock now as well. So because we've had a number of other UK routes developed since Great Western Express was released, we've been able to make use now of things like the JNA hopper on East Coastway and the PCA tanks from the Class 31 add-on. Those for different DLCs, different routes. But yeah, we've been able to bring those in. So again, if you have any of those other UK routes and trains, then your experience is enriched. So yeah, really, really excited.
Yeah, on that note as well, GC Ice, I think that is, suggested about the cement services as well, which are obviously a new addition as well. Do you want to give a little bit more information about what those are going to be?
So yes, so they are the PCA wagons from the Class 31 DLC. So where I mentioned about we wanted to do a lot more, and one of the things we did go into with the Great Western Express update is what can we do with the timetable. It was on the radar, but it ran into a lot of issues when we started using newer versions of the dispatcher and newer timetabling systems, and so that became an issue, and so we couldn't walk that forward without causing damage to everyone's progress. And obviously one of the key things that we simply can't do is impact player progress. So yeah, following some impacts that came out from the Tees Valley Line release update, obviously that became too high a risk for us to do anything in that zone of doing changes to the timetable. But I was able to squeeze in a few additional freight services. So there is another aggregate service on the timetable for the Class 66. And yeah, there are these two cement services. I have pictures of them actually being hauled by Freightliner Class 66s along the Great Western Main Line.
We will add those to the roadmap tomorrow. That was just a little mix-up. I've got Chris in the team to add those tomorrow morning, so you can take a look on the article tomorrow morning.
That's cool. Yeah, so they run between Thiel, just west of Reading, down to Earlswood, I believe it is, or Earls. I think that's in North London. So yeah, that was really cool, adding those in. But I think we are still interested in what we can do on the timetable front with Great Western. So I'm listening for what Joe might mention about Great Western. He has a lot of plans for a lot of things. Whether they come to fruition, we never know. But yeah, I'm listening out on the grapevine to see if anything is coming our way from Joe. Who knows?
You'll find out first on the roadmap.
Yes, yeah. Certainly, it's not going to be in this update. We're not touching anything major with the timetable on this update.
Yeah. That's I say. This feels like a really comprehensive improvement, Adam, and I think there's a lot of people really excited about this, which is great to hear. And talking about kind of the way that we're categorizing some of these preservation crew updates in the future, this one is classed as a large update. So we kind of have different levels of, or different tiers of updates. We've got from huge to large to medium to small to tiny, and that basically gives an indication of the kind of level of features that would be included within a route or a route upgrade. But what we'll do within the roadmap is we'll look to provide a little bit more detail on what those bits and pieces mean when a route is close to launch, or as much as we can do before a route is close to launching. So we're hoping that these will be in the hands of players soon. I'm not going to give an exact time because we don't have a date for it as of yet, but this gives you a bit of an indication of, at least from the Great Western Express perspective, what a large update would entail.
Yeah. I mean, to give an example at the opposite ends of the scale, something marked as tiny. It might be that when we've evaluated that route or train, it's actually only missing one or two of the features that are now standard across our catalogue. So something like West Somerset Railway, the only real focus of that update, given that it already has had a lot of attention, is to add the Dovetail Live Mastery reward to it. So that can't really be classed as a large update in any way. Another one would be LGV Mediterranean. Again, that is definitely on the small side, where to date we've only so far implemented the new Dovetail Live Mastery challenge, as well as rush hour passenger technology. So that's only a tiny ones where you can see there I've managed to spend a good 10-15 minutes talking about Great Western alone. So
I think as well what we've got is what we're looking to do with these is use them as an opportunity to identify some community pain points with some of these routes as well, and try and focus in on some of those whilst we do the kind of the upgrades to the routes as well. So as you might have seen with, say, rapid transit, for instance, and we'll come back to that in a second, the inclusion of the safety systems being operational, which was I know a particular bugbear of a lot of players, and we've used the kind of preservation crew update as an opportunity to kind of improve that based on everybody's feedback. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking to be able to do with preservation crew updates, and obviously with the increased focus on getting that content to you guys, the idea will be that those will feel like they're really substantial pieces of improvements to those routes.
Yes, I mean, funnily enough, the way it turns out is that a large amount of the feature upgrades are done by people who are not working on the bug fixes or the player reports. So actually, they all happen at the same time. It isn't that I'm allocating staff to spend more time adding shiny new things instead of responding to feedback. Most of the time it works out that actually we're able to do them simultaneously. But certainly when stuff goes into QA, it isn't a case of forgetting any of the reports that have come through and just focusing on the things that we've changed. Everything gets tested as though it's coming out for the first time. And yeah, it does mean that stuff that may not have been on our radar or wasn't on the scope to be fixed in that update, then does get included. So yeah, actually, from when we target an update to then when it actually comes out, the size of that update does in fact change.
Yeah, absolutely. And we mentioned testing, we mentioned QA. So let's talk about before we go on to Northern Trans-Pennine, let's talk about the release last week, because obviously we focused on Ruhr's Ignored, we focused on Hauptstrecke Rhein-Ruhr, and we also focused on rapid transit. There was a substantial amount of content that went into it, and it improved the routes to a certain extent. But obviously what happened was that we brought some additional challenges through to players as well, and obviously some of those have been really well documented with, say, the texture on the PIS on the Talent 2, for instance, or the doors misaligning on the Talent 2. Adam, can you give us a little bit of an insight as to how that happened? Because as I say, from a player perspective, as a player, I can see that pretty quickly that's happened, and it's a challenge. Yeah, I mean, when we're able to see that actually that's been able to go out.
Yes, yeah, and I can definitely tell you it is our worst nightmare to introduce issues when we're supposed to be improving things. Absolutely. So yeah, it is devastating to read when issues like that come up and we get reports back that some damage has been caused. So the good news is that we have got fixes, as JD has said. The misaligned doors, some issues with the displaying of the marker lights. This is all rapid transit, by the way. I do apologise. And the what was the
Level
PIS
crossings.
system around the window, the windscreen frame. They are all fixed and they're in testing at this moment. Really hope to get those out soon. But yes, so how did we miss that the PIS system was wrapped around the screen? So looking back at all of the communication we've had and the amazing input we've had from our beta teams, as well as our console beta team, which was involved for the first time on preserved updates in the May update. And we did get the feedback. It was acknowledged to us. The timing of it wasn't great, but that's our problem. We'll get feedback at any point in time, and it's up to us to deal with it as quickly as possible. But it actually stemmed from in the cab. There are obviously two ends to this particular train, the Rapid Transit BR 1442, and funnily enough, the player pretty much starts 99% of the time in the same end of the train throughout Rapid Transit. And we were fixing an issue where one of the cab doors had completely mixed up texture. It was messed up. It was from another part of the train, to do with, I think it was assigned materials in Unreal or in 3D Studio Max terms. And in fixing that and correcting that to its correct material, the regression test was for our testing teams to load up the train, load up the route, spawn in, check out the cab, fly to the other end, switch to the other end of the train and check the other cab and make sure the cab environments were all correct, and that there were no issues. There wasn't actually any testing to say, can you check every other function on the train? Those checks had actually already occurred, and we'd done a sanity check of Rapid Transit. We checked a lot of the systems. We checked the displays. This test was, can you launch up? And in fact, the screenshots that were taken, that were shown on the last roadmap article in May, had the issue at the back of the train. And I'd gone in, taken the screenshots, and it had never come up in the screenshots. So what we're doing now is not only are we moving when we do those all over system checks to the end of the line instead of what we thought was an appropriate place, but we're also broadening our what we call regression tests. When you make a change, the developer that's made that change has to say what they think might be impacted. They're also got to think a lot wider as well now. So anything, it's a general system test, but anything on that train itself needs to be rechecked, certainly. So we're always learning. It was really upsetting to see these things come out, especially as we've been working on adding that system into the Talent 2 for such a long time. To have it marred by that initial release was not pleasing. But each of these means we do learn going forward, and I know we get criticised a bit for saying we are learning, but we literally do improve our stuff every single time. So now the preserved updates that get released are not only being tested by my team directly, by our QA team, our dedicated QA teams that we have at Dovetail Games, by our PC audience, our PC beta testers, our little group. We now have a console testing group as well, which is absolutely fantastic. So we're really hoping, we're trying to cover as many corners as possible, and we continue to grow and we continue to take feedback as well.
Okay, because preservation updates are meant to give, I mean, they're meant to be the warm fuzzies. They're meant to be the things that give players like, oh yes, this is my reason to come back into the route and enjoy it. And I don't want to feel like when I get that update on the thing, I've got a little sort of pit in my stomach to say, oh, what's going to be broken this time. So that's encouraging to hear, Adam. And I'm hoping that when we come to do July's roadmap, hopefully there will be some other preserved content that's been given the preservation crew treatment, and we can then come back and say, well, actually, wasn't that such a fantastic update? And we're really glad, and the players are delighted with it. That's what I want. So
yes, absolutely.
Don't let me down, Adam. Don't let me down, Adam and team.
Yeah, and I can say, as of this week, the next patch has already begun testing with all of our groups. So we're trying to give it as much time as humanly possible to get fixes, get feedback, make sure everything is good and in good shape. So yeah, we really hope so, because we are the first people to be upset when we don't deliver on expectation.
Seeing a couple of comments about buffers as well. I have to admit, I've not seen that yet, and I don't know if it's been logged with the QA team as of yet. If you're seeing any problems with buffers since the update, then let us know. If you could submit a support ticket, that would be great, because we could then log it within the system and give it a check over.
Is this buffers in terms of the little squidgy pads at the end of vehicles, or the big hard blocks at the end of track when it runs out?
Without the context, I don't know. So if people are able to just give us a little bit more information, then please just submit a support ticket and give us as much information as you can. That'll allow us to take a look and investigate.
Yes, and actually one of the conversations I had recently this week on the official forums is that a ticket hadn't been submitted for an issue someone was experiencing, because they believe somebody else may have already submitted a ticket. I'd definitely like to reiterate, if you are suffering a problem, or you have some feedback, or maybe you have a suggestion for improvement, please do submit your own support tickets. It does matter how many reports on a particular issue or feedback we get. If we hear just an individual suffering from a particular problem, it may be related to their system, who knows. But if we have 20 or 30 people all reporting the same feedback, then that gives us a clear indication that there's some commonality between everyone here, and we need to pay attention to it quickly. So please do support your own, submit your own support tickets. Don't believe somebody else has done it for you.
Cool. Okay.
Vehicle buffers, sorry, I just saw them. Yeah.
A little bit more information coming through now already, but yeah, please give us it in that kind of format, because that gives us more information from what we could to work on. So thanks very much for everybody in advance for that. Let's talk about Northern Trans-Pennine, because that's obviously one of the other ones that we featured within the roadmap, and it is quite high up on the kind of the chronology of the things that are being released from the preservation crew. Do you want to give us a quick summary, because it's not quite as it's a medium update, isn't it? So it's not quite as comprehensive as the Great Western Express update, but can you give us a quick rundown of the top billing improvements that are going to be made?
Yes, so this one mostly features just the common feature set that we've now been implementing across our routes in Trenton World. So that is improvements to the skies, so they can be compatible with the new sky system, improvements to the track rendering, so that it's not jarring and rendering in front of you, the rush hour passenger system technology, so that's variation in time of day as well as in the number of passengers and types of passengers you get. Animated level crossings, as we showed in the screenshots, although I think there were only 2 level crossings on this particular route, but they were there nonetheless. Of course, the addition to the addition of platform departure boards, so this is very much using the same technology developed for Tees Valley Line. And we have some northern originating staff members at Dovetail, and they've been paying some love to this as well. So the Northern Trans-Pennine departure boards won't be identical to those from Tees Valley Line. They do have their own adjustments, apparently, due to local differences. And then,
that's nice. I like that.
And then, as may have been not so alluded to in the screenshots, is the addition of livery designer support on the Class 47, which is really, really exciting to see. So yeah, I threw in a few screenshots there of some of the liveries that I've been working on, just of my own personal interest, really, to see this fantastic logo coming. And at the moment, we're looking at potentially West Somerset also being part of this release. So very much like the May release was focused on German routes and trains, our June release is currently targeted as UK orientated. So that's really cool. And the West Somerset 47 has also received livery designer support. But talking specifically about livery designer, we did have a feature to be part of this this week's updates and news and articles and information, but actually it turned out to be so detailed and in depth, and we are still trying to bring it down in size, that it's going to gain its own release at some point when we think it's appropriate. But we do have an insight into what it takes and the process involved to implement Livery Designer on trains in Trains and World, and thus why you're not seeing Livery Designer compatibility with every update that we do, because it does take quite a different amount of effort to get that implemented. So yeah, we want it quickly as well, but it's better to do it properly and get it right than to just release stuff. So yeah.
People have mentioned like the 166 and the HST, for instance, on Great Western, and obviously that is a notable omission from the list that we published today. It's not to say it's never going to happen. It's just within this group of preservation crew releases, it's not going to be a part of it. And again, hopefully the article that I think we've got penciled in for the end of this week actually to be released,
Cool.
give a little bit more context as to why that might be the thing. Jake's done a really good job on Adam's team, has done a really good job of putting together a kind of a what's what of Livery Designer compatibility and how we can kind of bring that to some of the older routes.
Yes, and in fact, beyond the stuff that Jake is currently working on, the next train that he will work on for the Livery Designer stuff is due to be the high-speed train, the HST. But he's got a number of other projects that he needs to get through first before he gets to that. But yeah.
Heard it here first. Okay, thanks very much, Adam. Thanks for giving us an update on the preservation crew bits and pieces. We'll obviously keep you on just in case you've got anything you'd like to add for some of these other things that we'll be talking about. And just a quick shout out before we get on to the next section, which is the longer term improvement section. If you have anything you'd like to ask us, we're going to kind of leave a little 15-minute town hall Q&A style thing at the end of it for us to kind of ask. I won't say ask us anything, because we would like to kind of talk about some of the more broader topics within the game rather than very, very specific things. But if you have anything you'd like to ask us, then please put it in the chat. We'll try and grab it, and we'll spend a few minutes at the end talking about it.
What I'll be doing during this, obviously, while listening, is watching the chat, and I'll note down any questions that come up.
Cool. Chuck them in the script, Adam, if you see them. All right, let's talk about long-term improvement, shall we? Matt, tagging you in. Oh, there we go. Yes, that worked out actually better than I was expecting. Okay. Let's talk Xbox Jackhammer, shall we, to kick off things, because obviously that was one of the things with Spirit of Steam that was mentioned as a kind of an impediment to the enjoyment of the route of Steam, not for obvious reason. If it's something that's going to impair the audio experience is so paramount to Spirit of Steam that we want to try and make sure, as I say, that is something that doesn't happen for future routes, and obviously and try and backdate where possible. But actually, obviously, we released the information on the roadmap today. But I think we've got some hot news off the press, Matt. Do you want to give us?
Yeah.
Do you want to give us the lowdown? Because obviously this has happened in the last few hours, so we haven't really had a chance to kind of change the copy of what was written in the roadmap. But live stream tonight exclusive.
So I'm going to preface this by saying this still doesn't get us to a release date. In terms of this, however, what I did promise you all some time ago now was, when we actually had to test something, we'd let you know how the test went. So we tested it. We've had a QA engineer testing it probably for the last 2 days on various routes, and I gave it a test and actually streamed it on our local Discord server to the Xbox beta testers. Specifically, I was saying, what is the way that you make it go bad? And I'll do that. What's the worst I can do? What's the worst I can throw at it? And that was the two examples we looked at were Spirit of Steam we did a run from Crewe to Liverpool. From Liverpool to Crewe. And then we did a run with the Gatwick Express from Victoria to Brighton. And not one single issue was heard.
Ka-ching.
I did one of the tests in Series X and one of the tests in Series S, and the QA engineer has been testing on Xbox One, and the Jackhammer was not heard. Now, the QA engineers found a couple of other interesting quirks, but they may be related to the fact we're using the testiest of test builds to do this, rather than integrating it into a formal build. So we're going to look into that. We're also, the other thing we want to check into is, does this new way of doing the audio have any kind of change in the way memory is used? It doesn't seem to have any impact on CPU or frame rate. But is there any change on memory? Because obviously we really don't want to make the memory situation step backwards at all. But in terms of the Jackhammer sound itself, this fix does remove the Jackhammer, so we are making really solid progress on that now, and we're gonna push that forward. So the other challenge we've got to think about is how we then distribute it, because this fix in particular, the one we've got right now, requires every bit of audio to be recooked and redistributed. So you would basically have to download all of the DLC again. And if you've got all of the DLC on your system, that's a fairly chunky download. Now that might end up being how it works, but we're also looking at whether or not there's ways of maybe stepping this and sort of doing some of the top 2 or 3 routes that are suffering problems, and then doing a few more and a few more, so that it's not just one mega download in one hit. But we'll give you your news as we come along with what's how things are going. But I did want to just say, report the good news that the Jackhammer issue is we have made significant progress on that. So I want a big shout out, thanks to the engineering team, Alberto in particular, for some sterling work on that, which has been quite challenging, but and quite deep. But they've made good progress on that. Someone's saying, what is the Jackhammer sound? So essentially it's where an audio file doesn't play completely, so you have to pardon me my little demonstration, but instead of hearing like a you do and it sounds like it's playing the thing, instead of looping nice and cleanly, it's only looping like half of the file, and it just sounds like a Jackhammer. There are ways to sort of clear it, but then it'll come back again. So it's, and as you can imagine, that's terrible for the audio experience. It affects all Xboxes, no matter what platform, all routes and all trains.
Yeah. So, in summary, there is a fix that we believe has improved things, and we are testing it at the moment, and we are just trying to make sure that it is as good as it can be. And now we need to work out how we want to get that to players. Whether it is going to be a big old chunky download, and we're talking a significant download here, or if it's going to be selective, so we choose a few routes, or we do it staggered over a prolonged period of time as to not impact sort of memory space on the long term. Should highlight that actually is if you own a lot of add-ons, you're obviously going to have a larger download than if you have fewer add-ons. So as I say, it sort of increases as you go through and as you add more add-ons in. So. Yeah. That's some good news. Again, no release date as of yet for that, nor can we kind of give you a time frame, because, as I say, we need to be able to make sure that we're making the right decision in terms of how we deliver that to you, and that also it is a bona fide proper fix. So we will come back to you when we know a little bit more, but some good news to kick things off.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about PS5 DLC limit, which we are now renaming Add-ons Manager, because it's not just for PS5 now, and not to alarm anybody, the issue is not for anything other than PS5. It is actually the solution actually is more of a all-platform solution, and it should help a few platforms at the same time.
Yeah,
Matt,
so the underlying issue that kicked the whole thing off was on PS5. There's a limit of 64 gigabytes of active DLC, and it's very easy to get more than 64 gigabytes of DLC in your system. I think the whole collection is 164 gigabytes. And the problem you find there is that you've got all this DLC installed, and after a certain point, it doesn't load it. So you only get some of your routes and trains running. And what PS5 players are doing is they're uninstalling to get down to the 64 gigabyte limit, so they can choose and know the route they want to play is there. The solution for this has been to make the game much cleverer in terms of understanding. Instead of just loading everything, it will wait until you've picked your first route, or picked the route, and then it will only mount the things that are needed for that route. And if you then choose different trains to put it on it, like in Scenario Planner, it will dynamically mount just the bits it needs on that internally. And then if you then switch through, it unmounts all of that and mounts different sets of things. So you can imagine that it's going to use an awful lot less memory doing that. It's going to stay well within that 64 gigabyte mount limit. And so so that's the solution. So this is, we're calling it Add-ons Manager because it's literally what's inside TSW in the code that's been put together. It manages the add-ons. It loads and unloads them dynamically. This is not the same as installing and uninstalling. It'll all stay on your console, but it will dynamically activate and deactivate them. What the technical term is mounting. So that's currently in QA now. So dev is essentially complete on that. That's gone into QA. We've also the engineer has spent some good time looking over some of the community mods on the PC. And because there was some concern about, hang on, does that mean that mods won't get loaded now, or that might cause some problems? And he's also been spending some time talking to a couple of mod authors where some issues have come up to find out why is it done that way, what can we do to help, and to make sure the game is robust regardless what mods you've got installed. That should be resolved. The engineers made a lot of really great progress on that. There will be some caveats, and probably there'll be some mods. Some mod authors will need to go and make some changes. But as and when we finalise that, we'll let you know. But it looks like mod support is working at the same level. We're not changing how we support mods. We just want to make sure we don't break mods, essentially, because we know you're enjoying what people are doing outside the bounds of the normal play of the game. So the other interesting factor of this is that having all of this DLC mounted on your console. So on the PlayStation 4, we did a benchmark and looked at what the memory usage difference was just booting to the menu if you have all the DLC installed versus if you only have the core game installed, and it's about 500 megabytes. Which is quite a significant amount of memory. And what this is these are indexes, not actually loading all of the routes. That would be 164 gigabytes. But if what it's doing is it's effectively having like your Yellow Pages telephone index. It's got a catalogue of all of the files it could go and find and which files it can go and find them in. And that's taking up this enormous amount of memory. If you've got all the DLC. Obviously, if you've got less DLC, then it's less memory being used by this. But it's never zero. So there's always stuff going on there. Now, only loading by the add-on manager the bits that you want, the bits that you're playing actively versus the bits that you're not, means that overhead is reduced as well, which could mean that you're saving sort of 300-400 megabytes of memory just in the normal usage of the game. And what that means is some of these crash to desktop some of you are experiencing, in some cases, particularly if you've got lots of DLC installed, you should see improvements on those as well. And this is one of the reasons we're deploying the Add-ons Manager to all console platforms. I think it even goes to the PC, but it has less of an impact on PC. It'll be going to all console platforms, even though it originally was about fixing PS5's limits. It's actually about what it does is it helps improve all of the console experiences.
Yeah, and I think this has obviously been a long time coming, because obviously we came across this problem September time, October time, something like that, and obviously we're in June now. But hopefully, I mean, this is a problem which is, or an issue that pretty much is only us in the whole games industry that we've had to try. And
not aware of any other games that have got this much DLC. No.
And with working with Sony, we've been working closely with Sony throughout this, and obviously they haven't experienced this with anybody else. They've not really got any sort of best practice or case studies, so we've kind of had to go into this pretty much starting something completely fresh and completely new. And actually what has transpired, I mean, this is still a little bit hypothetical at this stage, so as I say, it's obviously a really positive message, and that's brilliant. We obviously have to make sure that this is captured in the real builds and all that kind of thing. It actually means that some of it could potentially help some of the major issues that we've seen with, say, Rush Hour, with 8th gen consoles. That's how significant this potential update could be, which is brilliant, really. It's a really great addition. Hopefully, will be a really brilliant addition to Train Sim World 2 in terms of playability of some of the content that we know that some players have been having problems with. Now, it won't improve performance per se, but it will help things with like crashes.
It shouldn't have any impact on performance. This is very much a memory related thing. Yeah.
So that's really good to know. Obviously, at the moment, it is still in the testing phase, and once I think the idea is that we want to try and get it out to our console beta community or our beta communities. I heard towards the end of this week, but it might slip into next week. In which case, we can then give it a proper once over, try a few more other bits and pieces with it, and if all goes well, because obviously this touches pretty much everybody's game, lots of content. We want to try and get that out to players sooner rather than later, obviously with the diligence of making sure that everything that we can test is tested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's literally just gone into QA, and they're starting to explore it now. So we've a little bit of a journey left to go, but we're on the home straight now.
Okay. Can I ask a hypothetical question, Matt?
Sure.
Because if, say, for instance, this were to save a lot of memory on a particularly intensive route, as we've seen with, say, Spirit of Steam, for instance. And I was saying about backdating, potentially, but for future routes, if we're finding that we're having to make optimization improvements to make the content work, could this also be a opportunity for 8th gen consoles, 8th gen platforms to have less of that optimization work happen?
In terms of cutting the experience essentially down
Yes.
to fit the available resources. I mean, we take that on a case-by-case basis. We profile before we spent 4 weeks profiling and optimizing to fit out the... optimizing is sometimes just a harsh word for cutting. Optimizing and profiling the experience on Gen 8 consoles, and it may end up being the same. It may end up being we end up with a different result. I don't want to make any promises on that front. We'll always optimize and profile it to try and make the best use of the resources that we've got.
A very diplomatic answer. So don't get too excited, but I've asked the question.
Robustness and reliability is the priority here. Absolutely, we need to get to that situation to where no one is worried about the game crashing anymore, and then we can start worrying about whether or not there's opportunity for more toys.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, all right. So that's two kind of the things that we wanted to talk about. Nice positive progress on. There's a couple more that I wanted to just go over quickly. One of them was achievements, and I've kind of I think we mentioned it in the roadmap as Xbox, but aware this is obviously touching on some of the other platforms as well. There are obviously a couple of achievements that are not unlocking and haven't unlocked for a while, and there are a couple that have been introduced with Spirit of Steam as well. Spirit of Steam ones, I understand, will be fixed with the update that goes live later this week, as do some of the mastery challenges that players have been having with the route as well. The other two, which I believe are a 187 and a 423, I believe, on Riesa Dresden, have been flagged, and the team are taking a look. Don't have an ETA as yet, but there is. We've impressed that it's something that we need to get fixed, because obviously we want the achievements to unlock. We want players to feel like they've got that experience of being able to complete things. So that's the update on the achievement side of things. Red light issues, Matt, over to you again.
So it's been on a number of routes where you'd be driving along, get stuck at red lights. Harlem is the most recent one that people have been seeing with the red lights. There are a number of causes of red lights. We actually put a fix out for one cause of red lights in one of the recent updates, and it turned out to fix, I think, a grand total of one service on Harlem in the end, which was a shame. We were hoping it would fix a bit more than that, but it was a good investigation. It did fix an issue, so some routes may be improved in other ways because of that. But essentially, we're on a process of looking at each red light issue as they come up and understanding the cause of it. Now, through that process, we have identified another fix, which is something we can do in the core dispatcher. And we haven't actually got to the point of doing the fix yet, but we understand what the issue is, and it's a slightly strange issue that only makes sense fully when you understand how these things work. But essentially, if two trains spawn on exactly the same piece of track, one behind the other, then the dispatcher doesn't actually know which one's in front. And it just assigns them routes when then they get all in a knot. Now that doesn't normally happen an awful lot, but can happen with busier timetables. So particularly on routes like Harlem, which actually does allow trains to start in the on the same piece. They can drive into the same section of track. Normally, signals specifically keep them apart by one section of track, which helps this problem quite a lot. But Harlem actually goes out of its way to allow the signals to go in there. So. So it's on engineering's list to have a look at that specific issue. I do not think that will fix every red light in there, but I can see that one having actually quite a big impact on Harlem particularly. And then, as I say, that's one output of that investigation. And then it's just continuing to go through the red light issues that come up and trying to work out, particularly where we can see patterns and then, okay, that's this. Or sometimes this is going to be a change to a timetable or something to add a dependency or something like that. So, work is ongoing, but certainly that dispatcher issue that's been identified is a really key one. So, it's half the job is understanding the issue, and then the other half is fixing it. Now, that's not going to be a 5-minute job to fix. It's certainly not going to be a 5-minute job to test. We'll let you know when we've got updates for that. But we certainly don't want to. Any change to dispatcher has to be done carefully and with caution.
Yeah, so we've kind of got the piecemeal bit by bit approach, which I think we can perhaps take a look at on a case by case. But the overall kind of ideal with this is that you'd have the dispatcher improvement would solve a significant proportion of the issues that we are seeing, rather than trying to kind of whack-a-mole with individual cases in point.
Yeah, I mean, that one is certainly, I can see that one having a big impact on Harlem. But to be honest, we thought the last one would have a bigger impact than it ended up having. And so I'm not going to make any promises other than we found an issue, we'll fix the issue, and we'll reevaluate. When we do that, what we do is reevaluate all the red light issues on a particular route, and then we see, what's actually changed and improved on that, and then we can then carry on. And having identified that one and resolved it, we then go back to going through each individual and saying, why are you stuck? How did it get in that situation? What can we do about it?
Yeah, because the piecemeal approach is I don't want to say it's unsustainable, but it's something that is very challenging to do en masse, particularly with something like a London commuter where there is so many services. So it will be a challenge, but we're hoping.
Yeah, cheers, Joe.
He is in the chat tonight, so we'll see what we can do with that, and obviously when we have more updates, we'll let you know. And just quickly on kind of the roundup of these, Save Game is still in the investigation stage. Similar, not quite as progressed, I would say, as potentially what we've just talked about with the dispatcher issue. We're still trying to identify and sort of nail down what the actual issue could be. But I know, Matt, you were talking about potentially having a member of the team looking exclusively at Save Game for a period of time.
We've had a QA engineer working at it for a while now, and he's done some great work in. He's not only explored some of the areas I asked him specifically to look at generally, but he's also worked with Chris in the customer support team, and gone through all of the tickets that you all raised in the support tickets. Thank you very much. And the QA engineer has gone through all of those to make sure that they're represented, and he's reproduced those, and we've raised those issues to make sure that they're captured in our tracking system as well, along with additional supporting evidence like screen grabs, any logs, videos, all sorts of things. So it means that when engineering comes to look at it, and what I expect it's going to be is it's similar probably to red light, in that there's going to be not one issue, there's going to be a group of issues of different types, and we need to find out maybe one or two issues maybe in the dispatcher and the way the dispatcher resumes, and then probably a couple of classes of issues which you find in each of the trains and scenarios and so forth, so that they make sure that they're resuming correctly from Save Game, because the game is all fundamentally built around load save, but one missing tick box somewhere can just break the whole thing. So it's finding all of those things, and once we need to get the engineering team to start looking through the feedback, we can start piecing through and start working out what those resolutions are going to be. But at this point in time, it's just the investigation and analysis phase on the Save Game.
Cool. Okay. That concludes our longer term improvements section of the roadmap. Thanks everybody for your questions and your comments in the chat. We're going to move on to some Q&A now. Now I kind of penciled in some times that I wanted to keep to for some of the sections tonight, and we are significantly over that already. That's fine. We like being able to provide as much detail as we can do. But we're going to try and whiz through. Some of these are a little bit quick fire. Thanks, Adam, for collecting these in the chat as we've been going through.
I guess what I will qualify is I may have written questions down, but JD is the one who decides if we answer them. So I've written many questions. I can't guarantee if they will get read.
The power is in my hands. Okay, all right. So let me have a quick look. I think we've talked about Steam next steps, and there are currently one of the questions was Steam on West Somerset Railway. Currently no plans, but again, if you want to play it on Scenario Planner, there are some really good scenarios in which you can do that already, and on off the rails mode as well if you want to. So there are some options for you if you want that, but there are no kind of current plans to do that. Has the NTP oily track been lost in the rendering improvements? I did see that one in the chat. Adam, you can probably give context for that.
No, so when we change the rendering quality, which basically means it looks better further away, we don't change the textures of the track. What we're doing is tweaking and playing with the technology that's rendering the track. So any texture quality that's there in terms of details, that is maintained throughout.
Cool. A few questions about the release date for Great Western Express patch. Don't have it. We mentioned it during the session. We don't have the date yet because the dates, the builds are still being put together and the content is still being tested. So we don't have a date for you. We're hoping that it will be before we come to you for the next roadmap. That is a little bit of a hint, but it might slip depending on how the testing goes. So it's all very dependent on that. Let's go to third part. Let's do a quick third-party summary, shall we? We talked about River earlier. Let's talk about Skyhook 187 and the Horseshoe Curve improvements that I think we've mentioned beforehand on a couple of roadmap live streams. Adam, do you have a quick update for us on that?
Yes, so I can report that Skyhook have submitted new builds and new updates to both their 187 and Horseshoe Curve releases. And on the 187 front, we've made great progress with the safety systems and the functionality of LZB, as well as audio improvements to the safety systems. So that's looking good. We're looking to get that in. We're looking for to schedule a release now for that. So looking at the other plans that we have for our releases. And on the Horseshoe Curve front, I'm aware that the Brickyard grade crossing just south of Altoona, that's now been fixed in terms of the animation of the gates. We've also had some improvements to the long trains braking objectives. It works for some players, doesn't seem to work for other players, so that was an interesting one to get to the bottom of. Being able to achieve gold, there's been an extensive review and refinement of the scoring thresholds for the scenarios so that they can be appropriately rewarded. So yeah, we're getting some good updates to both those DLCs. Skyhook have submitted them, and we now need to get them scheduled and get them in front of our beta testing teams.
Yeah. So as I say, they've been submitted. The process then is we then test them, we then check them, make sure that everything is as it should be, and then we put them into we schedule them for what we call a build, which then means that then we can put it out to players. So there's a little bit of time left before we're able to do that, and it is obviously subject to the testing going well. But sounds like there's been some good progress there. Okay. Any news on PlayStation players getting a beta test program, Matt?
Not at this point. We haven't fully got the Xbox beta testers doing everything at this point. We've just got them doing press crew testing, and they've been doing a tremendous job on that. Big thank you to them. But no, we haven't made progress yet in understanding how we can do this with PlayStation. So bear with us. It's not forgotten, but it'll take us a bit longer to figure this out.
Will the Great Western Express update result end up with 6 cars on console and 7 and 8 cars on PC and Gen 8. I'm not sure if I've kind of read that one verbatim. I'm not sure if I've quite got the right grasp of that one, but
yeah, sorry. So basically, a high-speed train, as it's operated on the Great Western Main Line, is what is called either 2+7 or 2+8. That is 2 locomotives and 7 or 8 passenger carriages. For the Gen 8 console timetable, this was reduced to reduce the number of variation of carriages in the HST train, as well as the memory footprint that train was occupying on Gen 8 consoles. So no, that change has not been made. It will maintain the current train sizes as they are. We have extended, as I mentioned earlier, we've extended some of the number of services that are operating, but in terms of when a service is operated and how much variation in rolling stock there is, it won't change the size of that train. That train is very expensive in terms of processing.
okay, cool. Will signage be made reflective at any point in the future? Now, I seem to remember there was some reflective signage on, was it Riesa Dresden?
Correct. Yes.
Correct. Oh, yes. I'm so glad that I managed to get that one. So obviously that was kind of on a route by route basis that we were approaching. And actually, the show we don't have Lukas on the stream now, because I know that he was sort of part of obviously making sure that route was kind of worked on to the fullest of its capacity. Is it something that we want to do in the future?
Oh, absolutely. I need to talk with the team and understand where we got to with that, and just see where we're bringing that into other things. I think it was Ed that actually put that into Dresden Riesa, and make sure that goes into future routes. I've not heard from the team as to how they're doing with that, but I'll find out, and we'll look at that.
It very much sounds like a feature coming my way, Matt.
Adam, so while you're here.
So perceptive, Adam. Okay. Good question about the add-ons manager, and I don't know if we were able to answer this one now, but how does the add-ons manager handle substitutions from other routes?
Actually, don't know. I will ask the engineer tomorrow.
Cool. Okay. That one will be a good one to update on when we next drop in. When will Kat be back doing another stream? Lot of love for Kat in the chat I've seen tonight, actually, so far, and with good reason. She's done some really great stuff, and actually somebody mentioned that her livery is not available to play or to use at the moment. That will come with the update that I talked about earlier, which will enable the wagons and whatnot to be utilised within Scenario Planner. Don't have anything in the schedule just yet. We tend to do it on a month-by-month basis. Doesn't mean to say that we can't get something in for her. I think she's got a little bit of leave in June, so we haven't sort of penciled her in for another stream yet, but we will absolutely do so. I know that there's been a lot of love for the stuff that she's been able to create, so we'll see if we can get another one in the near future. Okay, there is. I'm going to do two more questions tonight. First of all is around the core update that we put out for Spirit of Steam's release, which, by the looks of things, altered the speedometer and the kind of the bottom right icons on the HUD, changed the size of those to make them a little bit bigger. Obviously, that's a little bit. There's some players that noticed that straight away. Is that something that was, I guess, A, intended, and B, plans to be toggleable or to be and I'm not going to say reversed, but is it something that we are currently looking into providing an option for players?
So you mentioned this to me earlier on, JD, and I'm going to just repeat my utter confusion. No, there has not been any intended changes to that HUD. It's always had two settings in the HUD. There's a small one and a large one. You can change the size in the HUD in the settings. So tomorrow I'm going to talk to the setup team and find out what's going on here, and yeah, if anyone you know me, if you're on Discord, ping me some more data so that I can understand that a little bit better, because I am completely confused by that one. There was not intended to be any changes to the HUD, not to that HUD. We've added a new HUD obviously for Steam, but that one shouldn't have at all.
Cool. Okay. And the final one, and this is for I believe this is Red Rev, I believe, mentioned this one. We talked about sort of having different builds for and regressions and all of the kind of the testing QA terminology beforehand. Is having so many different builds within a particular update, does that cause challenges and cause more problems than it perhaps solves with the ability to be a little bit more dynamic and have multiple people working on different things at the same time? Does it cause problems when we do things like that?
No, pretty much that is why we have a team whose sole responsibility is to manage all the different builds, and where they go, how they're accessed, who has access to them. My team just works on one copy of the software that's in our source control system, and any tickets that come back, what we need to do is, if an issue is particularly marked for a certain hardware platform, is first of all obviously check the source to make sure that everything that we've put into the system works as expected, and then we start going through the different hardware platforms to check, is it related to a particular platform or is it related to the content, and then deal with it accordingly. So no, we do have a team dedicated solely to managing all the builds for us, and they do an amazing job at the coordination, and yeah, we do give them a lot of headaches when we deliver stuff at the 11th hour, and they have to include it. So yeah, thank you very much to that team. But yeah, doesn't cause us a problem when we're fixing stuff.
I give a wry smile because obviously, as we put together the patch notes for the different builds that have been created, and there's been a lot of progress made in the last sort of 6 months or so, but I know how hectic that individual group of that group of individuals, their lives get around build creation and managing that process, and they do a great job of it. They try and make sure that everybody's kept as informed as possible, and that they stay up at all hours of the night trying to cut what we call cut builds, so that everybody can get the content at the end of the day. So they do a great job. And one final question, because it's a nice answer. A couple of people ask about Steam Deck compatibility, and there's a little smiley face next to the answer that somebody's put in the script. So I'm assuming somebody's got some good news for me.
Yeah, so following, originally we were down in Steam Deck when they'd done some testing earlier on their Valve done the testing, they'd flagged up as unplayable, and that's what it was declaring itself as.
Sad.
So, but we had some, but I've run it on a Steam Deck and it runs fine, and players have run it and run fine, and a couple of people said, why does it say it's unplayable? It's really odd. So I actually submitted a request back to Valve, because the ticket actually saying it was unplayable did say this is down to issues on our end, nothing to do with the game, and I'm happy to report that having retested it, it's now marked as playable. It's not marked as fully certified or whatever the top end mark is, because there's a couple of cautions on there, just that you need to use the virtual keyboard in a couple of places, but actually it's now marked as playable. So fill your boots, it runs great on the Steam Deck.
I'm going to submit a request that as part of the preservation crew we need to test on Steam Deck, oh no, it's Matt that signs it off, damn. Oh, that completely lost.
I think
Steam Deck, Matt.
I think the team who are responsible for the builds have just thrown something at their monitors in frustration with that Adam. But we will leave it there for tonight. Thanks very much.
I've actually got before we head off, JD.
Go for it.
That's absolutely fine. We haven't been streaming very long, so we should keep going. Make sure people get value for money out of their streams. I've actually just been I fired off the question about substitutions on based on the add-ons manager, and the engineer happens to be online, and he answered the question. And the answer to the question is should be fine.
Awesome.
Should be. Basically, it catalogues everything in your collection at the start, and that makes it just as available, even if it's not loaded. And then when it decides it wants to use it through the usual processes, it will load it at the point. So, or your whole collection is just as available for you to pick or for it to pick, and it's just it will now load things as it needs to. So yeah, all good.
Awesome. Good news around then. All right. Well, I've enjoyed this Q&A section. I think we're going to keep this in future roadmap streams. So we've gone through. It's bedtime. It's bedtime.
My can won't last that long. Sorry. It's as long as my can will last.
Yeah, well, thanks very much, everybody, for your questions anyway. We hope we managed to get through some of the things that you've been asking about and giving you an update on some of the things that are important to you. And obviously, we're working kind of beavering away behind the scenes to try and bring you all the stuff that we've talked about in the roadmap tonight. Really recommend if you've come in halfway through or you've not seen the whole thing, we talk about quite a lot and we go over pretty much everything included in this roadmap article. The only thing that we didn't touch on was the timetables for Hamburg Lübeck and for Bakerloo. We're going to try and get Joe on a future one of these so we can talk about those in a little bit more detail. So we wanted to get it from Joe himself rather than us trying to hash it up and do it a disservice. So we'll try and get him on for a future roadmap stream as well. I'm not going to try and summarize because we've gone through quite a lot, but essentially DLC manager, good. Xbox Jackhammer issue, good. Other bits and pieces, preservation crew content for GWE, good. Northern Trans-Pennine, good. And then we're going to be working on sort of the QA process for future preservation crew updates because we're aware that there were some problems with the last one. Some of those should be fixed with the update that's coming out hopefully later this week. It might slip into next week, but we're hoping to get it out towards the end of this week. Spirit of Steam, there are some post-release improvements coming later with that release, but we've also got some longer-term improvements that we want to try and make as well. And again, if you want more details on those, you can watch the rest of the live stream. I'm not going to go through all of those right again now. And I think that's pretty much everything. We said hello to Lukas as well. That seems like a long time ago now. I think he was still watching a minute ago, but if not, then thanks very much, Lukas, for joining us as well. Adam, thanks very much for jumping along and telling us all about the preservation crew stuff. It's always great to have you on, and I'm hoping next time around we can talk about all of the great stuff that's happened with Great Western Express and the other content that we were talking about. Thanks very much. Here's where you say, Adam, have a great night, everybody, and thanks for having me on, JD.
Have a great night, JD. Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
me on. I love being here. I could talk all night, but there are other things that we need to talk about as well.
Absolutely. And Matt, thanks very much for giving us the updates on the longer term community improvements and obviously Spirit of Steam as well. It's obviously great to have you on as ever.
Thanks, JD. Everyone, have a good night.
Awesome. And people are talking about a pub quiz. Watch this space for next week's Rail Fan TV. We are back tomorrow. Jamie's back for a train simulator stream. We're going to do a workshop Wednesday. We're going to bring that back to the fore. So if you're interested in that, then please jump along and join him. Other than that, I'm going to leave it there for this evening because, as we all know, I like an early bedtime. So I'm going to hop off to bed now, and I'm going to try and grab the last 5 minutes of the England game. But other than that, have a wonderful evening, everybody, and we'll see you next time.